Welcome to lesson 3.3, and we are going to look today at how to solve a system of inequalities. So a system of inequalities is only possible to solve by graphing. This is not something that we are going to solve algebraically. The solution of two inequalities is the overlapping region of the two solutions. So if I have two lines that intersect like this, the solution is going to be something like this, where it's just a region. And what that means is anything that is in that shaded region is a solution. Any point in there is a solution. So let's look at a few problems. First, we have solve the system of inequalities by graphing. We are going to graph this first equation, or inequality, excuse me, by saying, okay, it's in slope-intercept form, so my slope is 1, my y-intercept is 2, so I'm going to have a y-intercept of 2 and a slope of 1. So I'm going to go up 1 over 1 for a while. And then, is this going to have a solid or a dotted line? If we look at our inequality, we see that there's no line underneath it, so it's going to be a dotted line. Oops, sorry. Like that. And then to choose a point to test, remember it just has to be any point that's not on the line. I'm going to go ahead and use 0, 0 since it's not on the line. And that will look like this. And we get 0 greater than 0 plus 2. 0 is greater than 2. And that is not true. That is a false statement. So that means that 0, 0 is not a solution. So I'm going to shade the opposite direction. All right, so I'm just going to use arrows for now, because if I were to shade this whole thing in, if I were to color it like this, then when I graph my other line, it's going to get a little complicated. So I just use little arrows to keep things a little bit more neat and tidy. We'll go with blue. So for this one, I have a y-intercept of positive 1, and I have a slope of negative 1. So this one is going to have a solid line because there's the line underneath the inequality sign. And when I use my test point of 0, 0, I'm going to get 0 is less than or equal to, and that's negative 0, which is just 0 plus 1. Is 0 less than or equal to 1? That is true. So that means that 0, 0 is a solution for this inequality. So I'm going to shade this direction. Now, if I'm looking at this, I'm saying, where do they overlap? So I've got 4 quadrants. I've got the first one, I've got the second one, third, and fourth. You don't have to number these. I'm just showing my point here. And so I want to see, where do they overlap? Well, the red line, it would be shaded in quadrants 1 and 2. The blue line would be shaded in 1 and 4. So that's where we would shade. That's where they overlap, because, like I said, the red one had 1 and 2, 1 and 4, so 1 is what they have in common. And this would be our solution. There's no final ordered pair, because with an inequality, the solution is all the possible values that we could plug in. So let's try another one. These are in standard form. So since they're in standard form, I'm going to find the X and Y intercepts. So for the first one, we have x equals 0 and y equals 0. When I plug in x equals 0, I get 0 plus 2y, so just 2y equals 4. And that would give me y equals 2. So I'm going to put that point on the graph. Then for y, when I plug in y equals 0, I get x equals 4, because the 0 would go in for y right here, and they would just cancel out. So x equals 4. And that one gets a solid line. It has the equal to line under it. Sorry, I don't know why I'm having so many problems today. There we go. All right, so when I go to check and see where do I shade below it or do I shade above it? I'm going to see that my test point is 0, 0. When I plug it in, I get 0 plus 0. So that's just 0 is greater than or equal to 4, which is not true. So I'm going to shade the opposite direction. For the second one, we have x equals 0 and y equals 0. So this would give me negative y equals 6, which means that y equals negative 6. And then 2x equals 6, which would mean x equals 3. So I'm going to graph those 2 points. And that gets a dotted line. There we go. Now, if it helps you to label these, that's another method that you can use. I do not expect you to label them, but I need to use my test point of 0, 0. So when I plug in 0 for both x and y, I get that 0 is greater than 6, which is not true. So I'm going to shade this direction. So if I look at my two lines, red looks like it can shade in 2 and 3. Blue shades in 4 and 3. And so they overlap in quadrant 3. And so this is going to be my solution. All right, one more. And we're going to throw an absolute value in just to mix things up a little bit. So with the first equation, my y-intercept is negative 3. And my slope is 1. So I'm just going to go up 1 over 1, keep it pretty simple, and then we're going to have a dotted line. So when I plug in my point 0, 0, we get 0 is less than 0 minus 3, and 0 is less than negative 3. Well, that's not true. So I'm going to shade the opposite direction of 0, 0, or shade the side that does not include that point. For the second one, it's an absolute value. And what shape does an absolute value graph make? It makes a V. So since A is equal to 1, I can just use translations. And I'm going to start by shifting everything right forward and then saying, okay, the M value is 1. So that means that we would go up 1 over 1 and then up 1 back 1. So my graph is going to look like this, and it's going to be a solid line. Oops, sorry. Touch screen is a little sensitive today. All right. And my final step with that is to pick a point. 0, 0 doesn't go through the graph, or the graph doesn't go through 0, 0. So I'm going to use that. When I plug that in, I get 0 is greater than or equal to the absolute value of 0 minus 4. So this would be saying that 0 is greater than or equal to 4. Not true, so I'm going to shade inside the V. And really where they end up overlapping is just this little section right here between the two. And that's it. It looks a little weird, looks a little different. There's still technically 4 quadrants. There's one here, and here, and here, and then this little one is in here. But we don't need to we don't have to number them again, like I said earlier. So hopefully this was a good review on how to solve system of inequalities. If you have any questions, please let me know.